America is a lot less white than it used to be. What? This dramatic change in America's ethnic and religious makeup freaked out white Protestants.
How about no, Scott, okay?
No one seems to support these ungodly, uncompassionate policies more than white evangelicals.
Let the Maoist struggle session begin, because the Holy Post is at it again. No, not just embarrassing themselves, but this time they're suggesting that white evangelicals are racist if they don't like open border policies.
Why does the Holy Post continue to misrepresent Christianity at every possible opportunity? And what does a true Christian perspective on immigration look like? We'll talk about that and more today on Indie Thinker. Welcome to the show. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. My name is Reed Huberman. Also, don't forget to check out today's show sponsor. Our friends over at Sailor Ridge can help you have a picturesque vacation. If you're looking for a tree house out in the middle of the forest where you can be isolated and alone and actually enjoy yourself away from some of the things that so often grab our attention. Or if you want to go to the Lookout Tower where you can overlook beautiful, picturesque North Georgia Appalachian Mountains, or you can go to the Shiloh where you can vacation like a hobbit. If you want to see what they have to offer your family, then you need to check out SailorRidgeTreeSort.com. And when you do so, don't forget to use the promo code IndieThinker. Governor Abbott of Texas just removed 1 million illegitimate voters from his voter rolls. Now, you may ask yourself the question, how did 1 million illegitimate voters get on his voter roll? And then you remember that he's in Texas, and the picture becomes very clear. See, the only reason that you would think an open border or discussions about immigration policy in America is illegitimate is if you are using shame-based tactics in order to push, I don't know, maybe Christians and the church further to the progressive left. And you're using shame-based arguments in order to do that, probably because you've been bought by somebody.
I cannot confirm that Phil Vischer and the boys took money directly from George Soros, but some of his friends definitely did. Now, they have tried their hardest to deny this allegation, but it's undeniable given a Snopes report that came out in 2019 that showed that the Evangelical Immigration Table received money from the National Immigration Forum in 2013, which was funded, according to Breitbart, by, you guessed it, George Soros's Open Society to the tune of at least $3 million. That same year, Ali Nourani, executive director of the forum, confirmed that money did come from the Open Society, but then she hedged her bet and said that that money was not specifically used for the campaign that the Evangelical Immigration Table was a part of, which is just another way of saying it totally was, but money is fungible, so good luck trying to trace it back.
With that being said, I share with you the constant source of disappointment, the Holy Post, as they argue about immigration and then wag their finger at Christians and say the only reason that you would ever have a problem with open borders is because you're white.
America is a lot less white than it used to be. I don't know if you remember, but we had a president not long ago who was black. We have a lot of people in the public square that don't look like our parents and grandparents. And there's a lot more people like me of mixed race background than there used to be.
Now, I'll try to let this video breathe a little bit more moving forward. Maybe. It just depends on how many lies are packed into this one video. But trust me, in about 18 minutes, they can pack a whole bunch. So we'll stop as much as we need to. However, I will just say this. Could you imagine telling pre-colonial South Africa, hey, your country is about to get a lot more white, and you need to kind of get over it. And if you don't, well then, obviously, if you got a problem with it, it's because you're a racist. This is the insinuation throughout this video already, I can tell you, in just like 3 seconds of this video. This country is no longer white like it used to be. Now, you may argue, well, when we're looking at America, we're not talking about a colonial conquest. We're not talking about people forcibly coming into their country and then using force against its citizens. You know, nothing like this kind of force.
And when I said hello, the person on the other end said, "Hello, Mrs. Morin. This is Detective so-and-so. I'm the lead detective on this case. There's no easy way to tell you this. But we found your daughter's body. We're 18,000 miles, 1,800 miles from the border. And because of this open border, we've had not just my daughter, but we've actually had two in the same county that we're from, where illegal immigrants have come in and have caused rape and murder.
So obviously there are similarities here. I'm not going to say it's a perfect analogy, but we are seeing a group of people who are forcibly coming into the country and breaking the country's laws in order to do so. And typically, if they don't have a lot of love for the country's laws when they come into it, there's going to be other laws that they don't care too much about as well. So let's see if this video gets any better as we move along.
America is becoming less white and a lot less Christian. And over the last half century, a huge influx of immigrants from Asia, Africa, and Latin America has made this country the most ethnically and religiously diverse place that the world has ever seen. Now, to some people, the browning of America is worth celebrating. It's the fulfillment of America's promise to become what Ronald Reagan called a brotherhood of man made up from the people representative of every corner of the earth. To others, however, America's changing complexion, it's something to be terrified of, something to reverse if possible. So let's talk about immigration policy, how it's changed over the last century, how it's changed America, and what we as Christians should think about it today. Many Americans trace their own roots back to a huge burst in immigration that happened between 1880 and 1920. Historians call it the Great Wave. This was the era of the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island and that incredible poem that's engraved on her pedestal. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. We celebrate that. We romanticize that era of American history. But at the time, people were not too excited about it because the Great Wave brought 23 million immigrants to the U.S., and most of them were from Southern and Eastern Europe. And a lot of them were Roman Catholics and Jews. In 1850, before the Great Wave, only about 5% of Americans were Catholics. But by 1906, that number had more than tripled, making Catholics the largest denomination in the country. Now, you may not think that's a big deal because you're familiar with Catholics or you're Catholic yourself and Catholics are just part of the American fabric. But at the time, this dramatic change in America's ethnic and religious makeup freaked out white Protestants like nothing else. Does that sound familiar? I know it's strange, but you got to understand that 100 years ago, who was considered white was not the same as it is today. Back then, the label white only applied to people from Northern Europe, meaning England, the Netherlands, Ireland, Germany, Scandinavia, those kinds of places. So all of these new immigrants from other parts of Europe, from Eastern Europe and Southern Europe, they were not considered white. And all those Roman Catholics, they were absolutely not welcomed as true Christians. And the Jews, well, obviously they weren't welcomed as white or Christian at all. At the same time that this great wave of immigration is happening, bringing all these non-white immigrants to America, there were two other important things happening in American culture. First, the guys with the pointy hoods were getting to be incredibly popular. By the 1920s, a combination of nostalgia for the Confederacy about a generation after the Civil War and a massive backlash to all this Jewish and Catholic immigration meant that the KKK experienced a huge spike in popularity, with over 5 million members nationwide. And here's the second big trend that was going on: eugenics.
Now, Sky, I'll take it from there. I'm so glad you brought up eugenics and racism in this video because Sky won't mention it, but I will for you. The founder of Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger, was a interminable racist and was a eugenicist. She felt like through the abortion pill and through abortions more broadly that she could create the kind of race that she wanted to see, and that there are little black babies that have the habit of being born in America, and we have to do something about that. And her answer for that was Planned Parenthood clinics. Now again, Sky is never going to do a video for you about the racist past of of Planned Parenthood, but he will somehow oddly point the finger at any present white Protestant who has a problem with illegal immigration and try to insinuate that it's just because you're a racist. That's the only problem that you have with illegal immigration. It doesn't have anything to do with fentanyl flooding the street. It doesn't have anything to do with the innocent men, women, and children who are injured as a result of this, either through human trafficking or through violent crime and the uptick that happens when immigrants come into this country illegally. No, none of that is actually going to make the radar. Just this stupid insinuation that he can't prove whatsoever at all. Now, are there white Protestants who hate immigrants? The answer to that would be no. Because there is no way to actually be a Bible-believing person and hate another person based upon their skin tone. And it largely doesn't exist anyway. Anybody who thinks they're a Protestant and hates somebody based upon their skin tone isn't one. Now, the only person that I see anyway presenting such an overt kind of racist attitude at all is the dude in this video who thinks that all white Protestants somehow, desperately, deep down in the cockles of their heart, they want a white nation. They won't ever tell you that, but that's really what they want, and that's why they hate illegal immigration. So, it's the whites. So, if you made that argument about any other race, it would be seen for what it actually is. Not only stupid, but racist. Let's see if it gets any better with one last clip.
And since 1965, we've had a second great wave of non-white immigration, and we're seeing the exact same fearful response. Calls to close the borders, ban refugees, and make America Christian and white again. Sadly, no one seems to support these ungodly, uncompassionate policies more than white evangelicals. According to surveys, they're the group most likely to view immigrants as invaders. And they're the group most likely to see them as a threat to traditional American customs and values. Evangelicals are the religious group most opposed to the resettlement of refugees in the U.S. These are people looking for safety from oppression, and yet it's the people who claim to belong to Christ who are saying they're not welcomed here. And in 2016, this issue of immigration ended up being more important than even abortion or religious liberty in determining how evangelicals voted. Jesus taught us that whatever you do for one of the least of these, you do for me. And he summarized the entire law of God with two simple commands: love the Lord and love your neighbor as yourself.
Let me share a couple verses that I think will be helpful in truly understanding what an immigration policy predicated upon the teaching of the Bible would look like. So sure enough, in Exodus 22:21, it says this: "You shall neither mistreat a stranger nor oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt." And then in Leviticus 19, it says this: "And if a stranger dwells with you in your land, you shall not mistreat him. The stranger who dwells among you shall be to you as one born among you, and you shall love him as yourself. For you were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God." So in other words, the Old Testament strategy for assimilating immigrants into their midst was to genuinely love the stranger, the person who is not part of the community, but to welcome them in as part of the community. In other words, to assimilate them into the culture. Now, if you look at the context of Leviticus 19, you see what that looks like, because God gives statutes and commandments about what it means to be a good Hebrew and eventually a good Jew. So in other words, if you're going to be one of us, we will welcome you, but you must learn what it means to be one of us. You must assimilate into our culture, and you must adopt our practices. That does not mean open borders. So this is the real problem. The people, white Protestants like myself, who have a problem with illegal immigration have a problem with open borders. We don't have a problem with immigration writ large. I say, bring in your huddled masses. Bring those who desperately need a good shot at life. But don't bring in the criminal. Don't bust open the prisons in Venezuela and then send them across our border. Don't, as it has been reported, take a bunch of terrorists and bring them into the country and allow them to set up camps in America. That's not exactly what the Bible is talking about here. So once again, we see the progressive left absolutely is dependent upon straw men to actually make their position. I encourage you, finally, with these last words: There exists in such a case a certain institution or law, let us say, for the sake of simplicity, a fence or a gate erected across a road. The more modern type of reformer goes gaily up to it and says, "I don't see the use in this. Let us clear it away." To which the more intelligent type of reformer will do well to answer, "If you don't see the use of it, I certainly won't let you clear it away. Go away and think. Then, when you can come back and tell me that you do see the use of it, I may allow you to destroy it." Chesterton's fence is a lesson in second-order thinking. In other words, you can create an action and it will have a direct result. But what will happen as a result of that action? You can take the fence down, but what happens when whatever was on the other side of that fence comes in? This is not a scare tactic. It's a simple question. What happens when the left lets in a group of immigrants to the tune of tens of millions simply for the cynical ploy of trying to give these people a bunch of government benefits so that they can sway a new voter base in their favor? Is that not at least a concern? The fact that they have come out and said simply that they want to do this, shouldn't that give us a little bit of pause?
And this is the plan of our friends on this side to turn all the illegals into voters. That's it, folks. That's what's going on. That's the game. That's why the border's open. That's why they've dropped it. Look, I respect Ms. Lofgren and all her work in this arena. Yes, I'll yield, Mr. Chairman. I'd love to hear what you have to say about this.
As a New Yorker, I would love to think that New York is the entire country, but it is not. It is not, and consideration is being given to permitting non-citizens to vote in New York, and I believe in the capital city of Vermont. I forget which that is. But as much as I'd like to believe it, New York and Vermont are not the entire country.
But, Mr. Chairman, that's the whole point. This is what's going on, folks, at home. If you're trying to figure this out, if you're scratching your heads, you see the video, you see droves of people, 2.4 million people coming over the border illegally, the president allowing, the Democrats in charge of Congress are allowing it. The deal is they're going to turn them into voters. You just heard it. They don't have any problem with that. They celebrate it. Here's the deal. We have a problem with it. The Constitution has a problem with it. American elections should be decided by American citizens. That's it.
So maybe it's not just simply for benevolent reasons that we have an open border, but maybe it is for benevolent reasons that we assimilate people thoughtfully and mindfully into the country, without which we don't have a country. That's the one thing that's lost throughout all of what Sky says. A country has borders, or you don't have a country. Now, the borders of our country are protected for a reason, because not everybody that comes here means well. That's not to say that they all, or even the vast majority of them, mean ill for this country. But the point is we will never know if you go and take the ideas of Sky and then literally make them our immigration policy. No one is saying that we care about the browning of America. We're simply saying that we care about America, what America is and what it stands for. It's much bigger than borders, but it's also protected by those borders. If you don't care about them, well then, I think you're probably just in bed with the people who don't care about them, and they don't care about them for good reasons. They also happen to be the people who want to try to shame people using racial arguments as well. Can't help but see the correlation there. If you want to think for yourself and think better than Sky, I would highly encourage you to ask yourself, what does a true immigration policy look like from a Christian perspective? And then reject everything that Sky just said and go with something that looks like protecting the people that live in the country presently while protecting the people who come in this country because you care about everyone that's involved, not in shame-based arguments like you just heard. All right, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and go with God.